Welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast, where we elevate marketing leaders inside and out. I'm your host, Veronica Rami, master marketer, executive leader, and mentor to ambitious marketing leaders wanting to advance their careers. Each episode is filled with genuine, unscripted conversations with some of the world's top marketing experts, accomplished leaders, and industry trailblazers representing brands, both large and small. Our goal with this podcast and everything we do is to help you master your role, nurture your team, prioritize your well-being, and evolve into an industry-leading rainmaker. This is the Rainmaker Podcast. So why do marketers really burn out? This was a question that was posed and answered in a way that I had never heard it before by our next guest, Matt Gagnon. He is a coach. He's a former TEDx speaker. He's a rule breaker. He is like a man on a mission to kind of punch prevailing wisdom in the throat. I've worked with many, many coaches. He is in a league of his own. This episode was so well done. There were so many mic drop moments, but really, like at the crux of it, he really defined, I think probably in some of the most concise ways I've ever seen done, like the difference between a coach versus, the need for therapy, his role, the ethical boundaries of when it's in his domain versus not domain. If you want to get into the mind of a coach who works behind some of the most high performing individuals in the industry, you're going to really enjoy this conversation and answer the question as to why marketers really burn out. So please welcome my guest, Matt. Matt, welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Okay. I want to kick this off because you and I met at a very, very cool event called The Gathering in Banff, Canada. And this was the first time that you and I met. And this is the first time I've been there. And what a very emotional marketing conference, which seems a little bit oxymoronic, but it was like in depth of marketing expertise and sharing of golden truth. But then it was also wildly vulnerable. I didn't anticipate crying as much as I did. Like I cried every day.
Right.
And it was really because of one of your clients starting us off that way. So Ryan, who's one of the co-founders of The Gathering, he kicked us off at our event by being wildly vulnerable and open about some very close people in his life passing away in the last 6 months, whether it's family members or best friends, whether it was a sudden loss, a health loss, or a suicide. Like it was really raw and it was really vulnerable. And his whole argument was like, let us not hide how lonely we are. Let us lean into community. That was the whole point of The Gathering. I mean, it's literally called The Gathering.
Yeah.
And then that was an open vehicle for all of us to be vulnerable. So I think we were just all kind of feeling it. And I remember looking at you because all of us were kind of teary eyed. And that's when your wife was like, yeah, that's his client. I'm like, whoa, you're the coach behind okay. So I desperately wanted to have you on this podcast because you are a coach for some high performers, but you are not also a stranger to grief and a stranger to hardship. Is that a good place for us to start?
Yeah, no, it's a great place for us to start. I appreciate it. Ryan definitely gave everyone permission to go to that depth. I think the speakers were going to be vulnerable anyways, but I think he gave them permission to be even deeper into that, along with all the attendees there, that it was absolutely okay to go to that place, which is, you do that from day one, right? From minute one, you're going to have an amazing, amazing experience. So yeah, that was hard to see. I mean, yeah, Ryan's been a client. He's also been a close friend.
Yeah,
He's
that's what
he's like
happens.
family. Yeah, he's like family to me now. Him and all the Gill brothers. But it hit me really hard too because I've thrived and through depression, anxiety my entire life with a brain injury, all kinds of different things. And I talked about at a TED Talk a couple of years ago my own suicide attempt at 30, and it was a reminder to me that I don't ever want to be a picture on a slide. I don't want to have a dinner named after me. I don't want any kind of memorial. Like it's just like it's a reason why I was like, man, I got to keep reaching out to people for myself, for them. It really hits hard, about how lost someone can feel in a very temporary moment, but it feels like an eternity when you're in it.
Yeah.
So definitely hit me very, very hard. And it was a reminder of why I do what I do.
I want to get into that because I'm always fascinated with people in your position, like coaches, mentor, life guides. Like you're not this acute person that teaches people how to do Facebook advertising. Like you're helping somebody with like the holistic totality of who this person is.
Right.
I find that extremely daunting. And yet, this is literally what you do. And you chose to do this and foregoing more of a formal corporate route. So, like, can you tell me your story a little bit? Like, how the hell did you end up here doing what you're doing, considering how you started?
Yeah. Yeah, I did the 15 years of the kind of the corporate retail life,
Yeah.
and I was really good at it. Paid me very well, but it just, even though I checked off all these boxes I had in life with a great car and house and salary, I was
Mm-hmm.
still suicidal. And just
Mm-hmm.
because you're good at something doesn't mean you're supposed to do it.
Mm.
So there are a lot of us high performers out there. We could do any job really, really well because we just were built that way. But you could be built for something amazing and phenomenal for something else. And if you're constantly being tugged in that direction, then you probably are meant to be doing something else. And so for me, that was a big thing. I was getting sick by 2015. I was 35. My son was, almost 2, and I
Mm-hmm.
was just sick. I was on disability. Life was falling apart. My dad had already passed at 61 2 years prior. His dad
Mm.
died at 61. I was like, man, I'm on a fast track,
Mm.
and something had to change, and it had to be from starting with my work. Like I wasn't meant to do it anymore. So I had signed up and gone to the Coaches Training Institute and started a whole course and investing my own money into a new education around it. Even though it was money I didn't have, I found a way to get it. And from day one, I started getting clients from that. So I worked with clients on nights and weekends. It's just like this was always part of me, was to serve others. And I just forgot. I forgot along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's what made me really good at what I did in retail was investing in my people.
Mm-hmm.
I invested in them. We made a shitload of money,
Mm-hmm.
but it was people first. And I remember going back and finding a binder from high school, and it had like a mission statement in there for my senior year. And half of the 10, like 5 out of the 10 things in there were all about serving others. I just kind of forgot. And so when I saw the world of coaching, it just made sense to me. I
Yeah.
was like, well, this is what I was meant to do.
Yeah.
So I took my life experiences and I paired it with an education, and it created something powerful for me to use. And so I went in that direction.
Do you ever well, sometimes I feel like people fall into coaching because they were the beneficiary of a phenomenal coach, or the opposite. They were working with somebody who wildly disappointed them or hurt them. And then they're like, F this, like I should, you know what I mean? Like, let me be one of the good ones, not one of the bad ones. Do you like, I always wonder like who coaches, you know what I mean? Like who helps you guys be in the service of others?
Yeah, I mean that's my focus is I serve others who serve
Mm-hmm.
others.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had to learn how to receive help too. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I served that audience, is because I
Mm-hmm.
needed it.
Mm-hmm.
But for me it was like I had some great coaches and mentors in life, like sports coaches,
Oh, for sure.
and some great mentors in life too. But there was also just something personally ingrained in there. But I just felt like I was born with a deeply intuitive side. I could always feel things, hear what was not being said out of people.
Mm-hmm.
Except when I was a kid, it was bullied out of me. People said you're too sensitive, and not everybody likes being seen. So yeah, it was bullied out of me till I stopped making eye contact for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and then I didn't give a shit anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll look anybody in the eyes now. I don't care.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I see you,
Mm-hmm.
and so I used the thing that was made fun of, and I realized that was my gift.
Mm-hmm.
And so I take that now and I run with it. So I've had some great people in my life that have helped me along the way. But my motivation is that I've just learned to accept what my own superpowers are, and
Yeah.
I embrace that. If
Yeah.
people think it's weird, that's fine. There are other people
Yeah.
out there that really need this shit.
I think it's always really refreshing to me. I have another private client of mine who he is unapologetic about emotions being your secret power. Not even secret,
Hmm.
it is your like superpower, both male and female, when men and women can tap into their emotions is when they actually start living life fully.
Yeah.
And so it's always refreshing when you hear men in particular, which I think obviously when you think of masculine energy, it is not intuitive, it is not touchy feely, it is not these things like you said.
Right.
And so it's really nice when you hear men who are able to access that part of them without it feeling like a demasculation of any kind, because it's not. It's actually one of the greatest sources of your gift, certainly as a professional, but also for yourself, just to experience the world in a more multidimensional way,
Yeah.
for sure. You talked about like this is what's interesting to me because I'm a huge friend or a huge fan of like, Brendan Burchard or these high performance habits, or I think Andrew Huberman's coming out with a book called Protocols. Like I love this world. I don't want to use the word biohack, but I love the idea of like high human performance, whether it's
Right.
mental performance or physical performance like an athlete. I'm always in admiration of people who are just in the service of their gifts, whether physically, mentally, or otherwise. However, just like comedians are some of the best in the world, they're also deeply, deeply lonely and sad, which is why you see
Yeah.
so, people hurt themselves. And it's always the people that you like, I never saw it coming. And I think that's what's so jarring or so shocking when you see these very prominent figures in high visibility situations who are secretly very, very sad and dark. You're like, how the hell did that happen? Like, I remember when Dave Hollis passed away, essentially like
Mhm.
overdosed by accident, I think is what was like the finality of
Right.
what kind of came out publicly. I was so shocking and jarring because he was such a happy guy and his books were like helping other people be happy, and yet he was wrestling privately with his own demons. You are in very close proximity to very visible, high achieving, high performing individuals. How do you help your clients not go down the self sabotage rabbit hole, that has
Mm.
some of those darker consequences while still maintaining their responsibilities publicly? That's always so shocking to me. How do you help
Yeah.
your clients do these things?
Well, creating a safe space, the most important part, building trust and safe space. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
it's, well, first, I create a safe space without meeting them to begin with, just by what I put out there for content, what I write about.
Sure.
Being transparent with that is like basically creating a lighthouse for others to say, hey, if you align with this, I'm over here. And by doing that, people feel a sense of trust before they've even picked up the phone. So once we've
Totally.
got on a call, they immediately already feel like I can share things with you.
Interesting.
Knowing that you're not going to come from a place of judgment's really important. Defining the difference between intuition and judgment is really important by saying like, look, I can maybe sense that something's going on. What it is, I'm not attached to. But if I say like, hey, I'm sensing that maybe you're a bit angry about this, that doesn't mean you are. I'm going to ask for clarification on it. Say, well, if you say you're not angry, say, all right, well, then what is it? Because something's there. Because if I do sense something, I know there's something, but what it is, that's up to you to tell me. So that's the difference. The judgment would just be if, like, I think you're angry, and you're like, no, I'm like, no, you are angry. Like, that'd be me deciding how you feel. Like, that's not cool. So if you create an environment where people feel like they're not going to be judged and they can be raw and totally unfiltered, you might be the only person in their life they can do that with. I
Mm.
mean, there are things we just don't want to be completely raw about with our own partners.
Hmm.
So we need a place to be able to have that type of freedom. And I think it's so freeing. So, yeah, having that place where you can do a complete unload of stuff can then clear the palette for some really cool shit to happen.
Mm.
So I think that's one of the most important things. And honestly, one of the most unexpected influencers out there now that's doing this in the most simplistic way is the guy Steve, who played Steve in Blue's Clues when
Oh,
we were
Blue's
kids.
Clues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Blue's Clues. He's back. He disappeared for like 20 years. He went to college. That's all. He went to college and then became an adult and did other stuff. But he's back on TikTok and he does the simplest things. He just goes, "Hey, how you doing? Let's check in."
Mm.
And he sits there for 2 minutes, just nodding his head like he's making pretending as if he's really listening to you, because he is. And what's amazing is the simplicity of that is you see adults just unloading in the comments about like,
Mm.
I just need a hug right now, Steve. Like, I don't know why I'm crying, or like my dad just died, or I just got promoted. People are just unloading stuff because they're so desperate for someone to listen. And Steve was a safe place for a lot of kids when they were growing up. He was something they really enjoyed. And as adults now, like, he's created this, it's amazing. It's so simple to just be a lamppost sometimes for people to talk to. It's the greatest gift I can give my clients, is to just friggin' listen.
Okay. I Yes, I love Steve and Blue's Clues. What a great example. Question though, because I also, and again, this is not my area of expertise, so correct me if I'm saying anything out of turn, but it's like I have also heard though that there are negative consequences or dangers to rumination. So, like, if you let your client stay in the negative venting or just
Mhm.
right? That expression, because letting out the steam is letting out this, like, yes, sir. Like, yes, let that pressure cooker needs to be opened. But then there comes a point where, like, there's this wall, or this moment where it's like, now you're hurting yourself by venting so much. Like, at some point we
Yeah.
have to do something with this constructively. I'm curious, how do you navigate that with these high performers?
Well, it's just like high performers are no different than any other human. So with anybody, it's just there's a certain point in time you can start seeing the cycle, the tornado starting to pick up. And when you start hearing the same things being repeated, we call that out. Like we just address it, like, hey, I can tell like this is a theme that's going on now. We're noticing this. So like once you get to that point where they've really hit that true self-awareness piece about what's happened, it's not just venting anymore, but now we're actually having a breakthrough a little bit about what
Mm-hmm.
what the theme was, what was going on. Then we can start talking about like, okay, what's one thing we need to change here,
Mm-hmm.
to get ourselves moving forward. We
Mm-hmm.
start looking at some types of actions, but it's definitely at that point where it's not like where they've gone so deep they're getting darker and darker. Now it's about like, all right, we're figuring out what the feelings are, what the truths are, and what the lies are in this. Because usually what keeps them down is like a limiting belief in a lie that they're telling themselves, and that keeps them in the shame of the venting. And so now it's like, okay, well, like, what about that's really true though here?
Mm-hmm.
Like you keep saying like you're never going to get past this kind of thing, or you'll never
Mm-hmm.
get over the failure of that business, whatever is like, whatever is about that. But it's like, all right, well, like what's really true though? Let's look at you as a human being. you know you're someone who's made a mistake. Does that really define who you are for the rest of your life? What's the purpose of that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are these different things. Now here's the ethical thing behind it though, is if there's somebody who truly cannot get out of a cycle and is constantly bringing up the same story, the same limiting belief, that's when I redirect people to therapy,
Oh, okay.
because that's where it is no longer ethical for me to try and take you to that place.
Ooh, I
It's
love
wrong,
this.
because as a coach, I can't, that's not cool. I stand by the ICF, the International Coach Federation. We have an umbrella of morals and ethics that we follow. And because our industry is unregulated, I honor the hell out of that shit because I don't want us to be regulated. It wouldn't be fun. But like there is a line though, when people get to that place and they can't get out of that, that's a deeply seated, rooted issue that a therapist can really help with, that they're qualified to
Mm.
do. I'm not qualified to go to that place. Even if I feel like I could, it's not right. So that's when I say, hey, you know what? I think that because of what we've tried to do here, and you're not getting beyond this, let's take a look at maybe some therapy options for you. And I'm happy to help you find that with you.
Mm.
Like, let's find the right fit for you. I'll be there with you. There are other times where I've had to say, I don't feel like it's appropriate for me to continue working with you until you've decided to get a
Good
therapist.
for you.
That is so fucking important. I don't want that.
Yeah.
Like, that's the difference between doing this for purpose and for money.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
a huge difference to me. And I can't tell you how many people I've had to stay on the phone with till they got to the hospital to do a mental like wellness check-in, to stay there, or like because they got to that point, and it was a point, like it happened without, it just showed up. And so like, okay, and then we talk about like, all right, we got to get you the right help. And there are some people I've worked with that are in therapy and with me on the off weeks, so like we work back and forth. Therapy is really going backwards in the past and the root. Coaching's a lot of going forward,
Okay.
present and forward. We dip our toes in the past, but we spend a lot of time in the present going forward. So therapy and coaching, you got 360 degrees of support. I've had clients do a release form between the therapist and I to talk to each other, so we're all on your team, and that's it. It's all in service of you, not about
Mm.
my paycheck. I get paid for this because it's okay to be paid for what your gift is and do what
Sure.
you do. That's
Sure.
fine. But there's still purpose behind it. And
Mm.
so, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's a point when you need to know when to send people to get the right help. That's when you truly know you care about who you're working with.
Probably the most concise version I've ever heard of what you just discussed, between one, the difference between therapy's function and your function as a business coach, life coach, right? Like just that delineation between, like, therapy is predominantly going to be focusing on past, where we're trying to get you to move forward in a better way.
Hmm.
That was fantastic. But also I have mad respect for what you just disclosed about like how you view the line between when it's no longer in your domain, when it should be in a different professional's domain. And you're doing that from not from a scarcity mindset, like, well shit, if they paid them, then they can't pay me. You're
Oh,
doing that
jeez.
because what's in the best interest of the person and what they're currently
Yeah.
struggling with, right? That that's probably the biggest, I would say that is the biggest detriment to the coaching space as a whole. I think there's been a lot of coach trauma because there are coaches that do not have those lines and they do not understand where their domain starts and ends. And they try to be a be all for somebody and then they do more harm than good. I'm not saying their intentions were bad, but it just happens. And so I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. I don't think we hear that often enough. And so I just want to give you some flowers for that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I saw because you and I both spoke at this event. And so it's always fun when you start to see people like give shout outs on social media, thanking you for
Right.
your contribution. And I think you had a slide or something that was like, you don't have to wake up at 5 a.m. to hit your, like, to have all of your life's dreams or something like that. And I know your book is Atomic
Yeah.
Mornings. So, like, give me a teaser, give me a taste. Like, how do you? I do get a little triggered when people that don't have kids tell me how I should structure my mornings. I'm like, "Hmm." So, like, just full of fair warning. But, like,
Yeah.
how do you
I have kids.
see
I get it.
how? Well, yeah, because it's just
Yeah.
different. Like, I have other humans that I need to get out the door, and then I
Yeah.
also right sleep is important. So, like, how do you define what an atomic morning is? How do you
Yeah.
navigate your clients through that? Because I'm very
Yeah.
curious.
No, I'm putting it all in an ebook. It's not done yet, but I'm getting that finished. But yeah, the thing is, you don't have to wake up at 5 a.m. to be
Mm-hmm.
successful. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, and I'm telling everybody this, if someone tells you that, they're an asshole. It is like they're just
Thank you.
such a dick
That's so
move
fun.
to say something like that. You really don't.
It's
And like,
really
no,
funny.
I know why they say that. Like Robin Sharma is amazing. I know they're saying because it's just like a general idea. Like what I really hear is get up at a consistent time.
Yeah,
5 a.m. is just a nice bucket to put people in.
sure.
But in all honesty, Atomic Mornings for me is it's about custom, it's about personal, it's about you. It's about how you design your morning and your routines for the same idea of like let's be healthier, more like fulfilled humans by the end of it. Like the whole goal is for you to take care of your damn self so you
Yeah.
can be the best for everybody else. So that's the greatest gift you can give the world is to take care of yourself. It's simple. Take care of yourself. It's the greatest thing you can give this world because the world wants the best of you and not what's left of you. It's
Mm-hmm.
very simple.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we've taught everybody that that's selfish.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Mm-hmm.
selfish thing to do. If you
Mm-hmm.
wake up early, you should do more work, or you should do stuff around the house so before the kids wake up,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So no, like we got to challenge a bit of the norms. And one guy actually said it. He goes, I was on a call the other day with somebody. He goes, yeah, I want to do this with you. I figured if I could add 2 more hours to my life every day, I'd be living, 2 more years, of my life I'd get back. I'm like, well, we don't want to add 2 more hours to your day. We're just reallocating it. We're just taking it from the night when you were just dicking around on your phone and eating garbage to putting it now in the morning. So you're going to go to bed 2 hours earlier and wake up 2 hours later. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's basically the other way, 2 hours
Yeah,
later.
yeah. No, I got what you're
Yeah, you're
saying.
just getting up earlier.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, we're not adding, we're not doing that. We're just going
Mm-hmm.
to make sure you're getting your rest and you're taking the time and
Mm-hmm.
putting it in the morning now. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this is about custom. First, it's about doing it with grace and not extremes. Because I'm extremes. Like my whole life, everyone told me, slow down, slow down. But no one ever told me what the fuck that looks like. They just kept telling me to
Mm-hmm.
slow down. I'm like, but no one, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
It's like either zero or nothing,
Yeah.
like 100% or nothing. So, but I've learned how to soften and I've learned how to slow down. So now I'm telling people like, let's just celebrate getting up for the first couple days. That's it. It's real simple. Like we're gonna wake up. We're gonna get on a call together for 15 minutes at the time. You decide we're waking up, and we're gonna be okay with being awake. You can do whatever the hell you want to do for the rest of the day or the rest of the morning, those first couple days. But my expectations for you and the ones I want for you to have to yourself is just celebrate. You did it. Congrats. This was really hard. You know, some days getting out of bed is the greatest achievement you can have. That'll be your best some days because it's really hard. Just sometimes just being alive is really hard.
Yeah.
And so we need to be okay with celebrating just getting out of bed. And so for the beginning, that's it. So we decide how many hours you want to yourself every morning before everyone else gets up, before you got to go to work. Then that helps us decide when you need to go to bed, how many hours you need to sleep. And then slowly we just start organically figuring out, like, what's the one thing you want to start doing? What's the one thing you've always pictured yourself doing in the
Mm-hmm.
morning?
Mm-hmm.
Because the rules are you can't do work, you can't do chores. Like, this is all going to be for you, and that's it. I'm going to hold you to that. That's a commitment we make together. And so, yeah, I ask people. I do encourage that the first one kind of be around some type of movement of the body. It doesn't have to be, but what I have learned in the 5 years of doing this program is that movement, especially morning walks, have been life changing for everybody. It's just been a consistent trend. I haven't, every single person that's decided to do walks in the morning has loved it. Like, I got one guy in Australia. He was pretty awesome about this. Super competitive, very high performer. And when he does his morning walks, like I said, do you have like a certain like spot that you walk towards? He goes, no, I don't. For once, I don't have a marker to get to, because then I'd start timing myself,
Mm.
and I'd want to do it faster, and then I'd want to see if I could go beyond that and get back faster. He goes, for once, like I don't do that. I just walk, and then it's time to go back. I'm like, that's amazing for you. Like, he doesn't do that anywhere else in life, but he's learning it there.
Mm. I
So
love
it's
walking. I
teaching
love
people
it.
these things. Yeah. And I,
Yeah.
I, I encourage people when they do these morning walks, no music, no podcasts. Try it out. No input, just no other input.
No
Just let
music,
no
no
music, no podcast.
podcast.
Just like that's more input. I love music. I love podcasts. But a morning walk, why don't you actually just enjoy the stillness and what's going on around you for once?
Mm.
Like, I want you to, it's basically stillness in motion when you're
Mm-hmm.
walking without that stuff in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Just like hear your own thoughts. You're
Mm-hmm.
walking for your own self awareness, to understand what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
maybe just to see what's around you. It changes your perspective. So there's a time for music and a time for podcasts. That's great, but that's input, that's stimulation.
Mm.
Like, walk, actually learn to be with yourself, because that's the thing it seems to be most people are afraid of, is to just be with themselves and their own thoughts. So we constantly distract ourselves from it. That's why we find topics to get pissed off about. That's why we argue about what other people are doing, is because we don't want to face our own shit. So be still for a moment.
Okay, this is really interesting to me. This is a very interesting topic because I do this thing. I like people. I do. I'm not 100% an extrovert. I'm certainly not an introvert. Like, it depends on the mood. It depends, all those things. But like, one of the things I do like to do is I like to curate and bring people together.
Yeah.
And so when I moved from South Florida to North Carolina right before the pandemic, that was taken away from me because we were all, obviously
Yeah.
isolated and meant to stay isolated for a really long time. And so as we came out of it, I was like, damn, like I moved to this beautiful state when I couldn't make friends with anybody, like really on the brink of the world shutting down. I really need to make friends. But then I was like, I'm a very distinct zebra. Like, a woman who works, has her own business. I'm more of an online personality. Like, it's a niche within a niche within a
Right.
niche. And so I'm like, are there people like this around here? Because I know there's a big hub in Tennessee and there's some
Hmm.
LA, and like they're all spread out. But I'm like, in Raleigh, North Carolina. And so slowly as I get to like, I discover people around me, I just start adding them to this like group. And this group now meets the last Wednesday of every month. We have dinner together, and it's big enough where it's a different 6 or 8 women that show up. And so it's always kind of a little bit different of a group every single time. It's just whoever has availability on their calendar. And
Right.
so this last Wednesday, we all had dinner, and on the end of the table she's my personal parenting coach. I've used her in the past, and she's a pediatrician who recently retired, and now she's a full-time parenting coach. So she's a coach like you, and she's working with parents. And obviously we go to her like, our kids suck, and she's like, you're the problem. She's the best. But she was disclosing to us, she was telling us, and all of us were validating this reality. When your identity shifts from corporate or something really stringent like a pediatrician, like, right, like those kind of white
Hmm.
collar roles, your schedule is predetermined. Everything is laid out. You go from here to here to here to here to here. And then all of a sudden you become an entrepreneur and you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm in control of my calendar. I don't have to work a traditional 9 to 5. I decide the rules of the game. And so she was saying, she's like, yeah, there's these days where sometimes I don't even have calls until 12. And so between like 9 and 12, I'm like, what do I do with myself? And then she's like, and then
Yeah.
I'm feeling guilty that I'm not doing more. And then all the women were like, yeah, we are like almost incapable of chilling out, because if there is a moment, if there's like 20
Hmm.
minutes, a sliver of time that there's nothing pressing, we feel like we should still be productive in that time. And so you
Yep.
feel guilty for not taking advantage of every moment because it's always so like precious. So you saying, hey, not only do I want you to go on a walk, but I'm going to challenge you to not have any input. I'm like, oh my gosh. Then I think I would feel guilty taking a walk without like double dipping or triple dipping in efficiency.
Yeah. Well, you're not being that efficient though.
But I think that's the lie. I think that's what you're
Yeah.
disclosing.
Yeah.
It's a fallacy.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole idea, do less is doing more, some kinds, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's true. I'm just challenging people to do what scares the shit out of them. And that's sometimes just be with their own thoughts, because you're not crazy. You're a brilliant human being. So maybe for once, instead of always constantly taking in input, why don't you just like actually be with your thoughts and see how brilliant you are? Like, you don't have to constantly like have someone tell you how to think. Just take a minute and actually apply some of the shit you've learned, instead of constantly going to a new course and a new podcast, a new group, learn. Eventually, like, just apply some shit for a while. Take a break. Take a break. Actually, just see maybe how you think and see how beautiful, creative, and resourceful and whole you are naturally, and work with that. Because you are. As a coach, the last thing I'm ever going to do is give you advice. The second I give a client advice, I'm making the assumption that you don't have the ability to come up with your own answer. Like, I am robbing you of your own creative and resourceful stuff. The reason why people typically rely on advice is no one's held them in the position of being creative and resourceful. They just rescued you. So I'm not going to rescue you with advice. And if you get
Yeah.
nervous because I won't give it to you, it's because, yeah, no one's held you in that place. I'm not going to do that. Guess what? You're fucking brilliant. I'm going to tell you to give me an answer. And the best part is most people say, I don't know what I would do. I'm like, well, just guess. What would you say if you had to guess? And then they rattle off the most brilliant shit I've ever heard. And I'm like, you knew. I won't ever lie to yourself like that again, that you don't know. All I had to do is just ask you to guess, and you knew. So people are brilliant, but a lot of people have been shut down or made fun of or burned or told that they were stupid. So they keep that stuff locked in.
Mm-hmm.
So I just remind people that they're pretty friggin' awesome, and they come up with some stuff that's just mind blowing. Because if I ask questions that are agenda based, again, I'm manipulating, and I'd be robbing people of saying something really cool. So if someone
Mm.
says, "Is that the answer you're looking for?" I'm like, "Whatever you said was what I was looking for." I had no idea you would interpret the question that way. So that's really cool. Like, you gave me something mind blowing on that. And so that's awesome. So yeah, it's kind of a tangent there, but those are
No, it's
things that I
not a
really
tangent.
believe in.
Actually, when you go off, when you, what I call what you call it, like when you're punching prevailing
Raw
wisdom.
flow.
No, well, but we in the marketing world, I would say like you're punching prevailing wisdom in the throat. You're challenging
Hmm.
conventional wisdom. Like I think it's actually when you do that is when it's my favorite moments from you, because I'm like, yeah,
Same.
I like it.
I agree.
I like.
I'm a marketing major. I'm a marketing guy. It's
Yeah,
deep in my
yeah,
soul
yeah.
too.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of marketing, you identify as a marketer, you're around you and I just came back from a marketing conference, like you're around marketers, people who also identify as high achieving, brilliant marketers. Do you think there's something unique about our breed? Like not only does everybody struggle with very similar things, but I'm curious from your perspective, what is unique to us and the type of professionals we are, maybe in contrast to anybody else. Like, because I deal with a lot of marketers who are burned out, and I know this we're not the only category of professionals who are
Right.
crispy. But I'm curious what your narrative is working with other types of humans and then working with marketers. Like,
Yeah.
real talk. What's it like working with us?
It's awesome. We're misfits.
Yes.
We think different.
Yeah.
We've never been built for a box. We're usually quite irritated if we're put into a box. We're not meant for necessarily long term. If you work in a company, we're not going to be tenured. CMOs go through rotations pretty quickly. It's not because
They
they're no longer
are.
valued, but
Yeah.
because they need fresh perspective sometimes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think one of the most influential things I heard was Jeff Cottrell was the CMO of Coke at the time, and he was there twice, and then he was with Converse in between. And I remember he says he starts his journal off with every company he works for, and the last page of his journal says you're fired, because he knows it's going to happen. He goes, I'm going to get fired from here. It just happens. I mean, this is my second time back with Coke, So I heard him speak before this new guy was here. He's at Top Golf now. But it was brilliant. And he just talks about that's our life cycle. But yeah, I find working with people who are marketers or just they're innovators, they're disruptors. They think outside the box. The ones who get burned out start trying to fit in a box, and they start trying to come up
Ooh.
with ideas that other people will like. Hey, what do people want to hear? Like, what do people like to hear? Like, they start putting a box in their own personality, and they start thinking about everybody else. And the idea is like, I don't know, you got to have your personal flavor and touch on it. That's what makes you different. So, yeah, people get burned out, start going into a box. And it's usually because they've allowed somebody to put them in one.
Oh my
So, and that's the
gosh.
whole idea too about doing your job from desperation and not from purpose. Is like when you do
Yeah.
it from desperation, you start
Yeah.
doing it in this box format. And yeah, if you do it from desperation, that's all you're going to get in
Yeah.
response. Desperation. And it's going to feel shitty.
I have never heard it said that way. I've never heard marketers who are burned out, it's because they start putting themselves in a box versus letting their, I've never heard it said like that, but you're
Me too. I've never said that
1000.
before.
Well, that was so smart because it's so true. Like we are the cross section between like art and science. We are
Yeah.
logically minded but creative little geniuses, and we have these moments of brilliance, and every time that we try to fit ourselves into a specific shape to appease the CEO or appease the client or whatever is when we are no longer integral with ourselves. And when you're not in integrity, you burn out.
Yeah. The secret is with a lot of them,
So smart.
and this is really for everybody, but specifically, our people, is you can't just, it's fine to value your career. It's fine to get joy and fulfillment from that. It can't be your only thing.
Yeah.
You can't just invest in one thing for your retirement because if
Yeah.
great, if it does well, you feel like you're killing it in life. If it starts to fail, you're like, shit, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
You got to have to diversify your own personal values in life too. You got to have a diverse portfolio of values and energy and creativity. It can't just be your work. So for marketers or the creative people, you got to have other shit going on that fills the cup, that takes care of you. Like,
Yeah.
that's why I have a shitload of vinyl records behind me. I
Yeah.
love listening to music. There's specifically vinyl. I like the storytelling. It makes me more creative. It
Mm-hmm.
makes me more in touch with my emotions. It takes me to
Mm-hmm.
different places in life that I can recall and be, oh, I want to take that back with me. I forgot about those things.
Mm.
I perform music. I'm sitting in front of my keyboard. I have guitars everywhere. I perform music on weekends because singing helps me articulate emotions my words can't. So, and it keeps me off the news. So it's a good thing for me. So like, but like
That's
I have
funny.
to tell these individuals, I'm like, yeah, you're into this industry because you're also brilliant in so many other areas. What are you not doing? Like, what are you
Mm-hmm.
not doing outside of your work? You got to do other things
Yeah.
because it reminds you who you are,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I got sick, it reminded me of all the things that I left behind, like volunteering. I forgot how much I love doing that. So, like my son and I, we volunteer at a retirement home here once a month. We play guitar and sing for the elderly. Like that stuff takes us out of our head,
Mm-hmm.
makes us
Mm-hmm.
better humans. Going
Mm-hmm.
hiking, going to hike when I was in Banff,
Yeah.
same idea. You have to do these things. Atomic Mornings is implementing a little bit of that into it. My full-time coaching work focuses a lot of them on that, but that's what we do. I remember Ryan will share this openly. I remember Ryan saying to me, he goes, look, I got a bougie golf membership. I get it. I pay a lot for it. He goes, I can't remember when I golfed last. Like, I don't,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't. And he's like, I like golfing. And so like, he wasn't doing that. It was like 5 years ago when he was the first guy. And he's like, all of a sudden he made some changes in his routines, changed his life around. He was golfing again. He was having dinner with his kids again.
Yeah.
And it became sacred space because he realized when he did that, he was better at his
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
He was
100%.
better in life.
Yeah.
That's it. So it's about figuring those things out. Again, if I play the guitar 15 minutes in a week, I'm a better person than I was when I wasn't.
Mm.
So it's counterintuitive in our world to make time for those things. But man, 15 minutes of that will make me way more efficient. It's clean burning, efficient fuel
Yeah.
instead of like a coffee or caffeine or junk food, which
Yeah.
is just
Yeah.
garbage fuel.
Yep. Yep. It's cheap fuel. Yeah. 100%. You're like a walking like mic drop moment kind of. Oh, like some pretty honestly, I can already tell that we're gonna have a hard time clipping up this podcast because it's just so good. So we do this fun thing where you've been so gracious and so open to whatever I wanted to ask you selfishly. So I think the tables need to turn. What question would you like to ask me to end our time together?
What's your current soundtrack in life?
Current soundtrack.
Yeah.
True. So true story. I have a playlist called Legends. It's actually on one of my sales pages where you get to a certain point in the page. It's like, if you've made it this far, listen to the song called, like,
I
the song was
love
like,
that.
this is how legends are made. And then you can proceed to read the rest of the page. But it's a playlist of just these, I think, ballads or just power anthems of just being wildly unapologetic about the legend that you are, or that you're meant to be, and being legendary. And so I have a Spotify playlist.
God, that reminds me of everything Sia has written.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah. It's another good artist. Yeah. Or
like Bird
Eminem,
Set Free.
or
Yeah.
yeah. And so that when I go work out, or right before I go on stage, right before the gathering, I went back to my room and I was playing my DMX and stuff.
Yeah. All
like,
right.
and like, cause somebody was asking, like, do you need anything before you go? I'm like, no, I got my own, I know what to do. I know how to channel that
Yeah.
Beyonce part of me. And I'm in this, well, and that's because I'm about to release my first book ever in January. And so
Wicked.
like, I can tell that my identity is also transforming from just, I think, seeing myself as a consultant first to now being
Right.
more of a speaker, author, thought leader first, consultancy, secondary to that. And that's a new shift, that like, it is more what I have to share than it is what I have to do. And I can feel that identity transformation occurring. And so I want to channel that and support that.
So what's the power ballad or legend song you want to gift me with today that I should listen to?
Okay. Literally, this is the best song ever. In fact, my kids, they know that I love this song so much that they're like, when we're driving to tackle football, they're like, Mom, put the song on. I'm like, okay.
All right.
So it like hypes them up. So it's called, the song's called Legends Are Made. And the artist is Sam, and then the last name is Tinnes.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the song that kind of kicked off the entire playlist, but that was the original song at the top.
There it is.
Yeah.
Legends Are Made.
So that is the current soundtrack for Veronica's life. Real talk.
I've got lightning inside me.
Yeah.
I like it. All right.
Yeah.
Jeez, these are easy chords. I'll be able to play this. Nice.
So that is my honest answer, because it's true.
Good. It's open mic night tonight, so I can finally try and play this. That's cool. Thanks. I love it.
You're welcome. Well, hey, thank you, sir, for being on today's Rainmaker podcast.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on today's Rainmaker podcast. Marketers help other marketers. So if there's a marketer in your life who could really use a new perspective in a way that helps them advance their career, please pass this episode forward, share, leave us a review. Everything helps as we embark on helping as many marketers elevate themselves inside and out. You can always visit veronicarami.com for today's show notes, additional links to some free resources and tools for you to help you advance your career. You can always connect with us on social media at @VRomney if you want more behind the scenes or a way for us to connect personally. Until next time, my friends, make it rain.